Hi, I'm Maya, and today I want to talk about Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I have read this book so many times, and I recently finished my latest reread of it, and that just further cemented for me that this is my favorite book of all time. I was going back and forth with other books, but yeah, I've decided that this is the best. It makes me laugh and sob and cheer and ponder, and what else could you want from a book? So, a quick summary, the book is about the four March sisters, Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy. Their father is away serving as a doctor in the Civil War on the Union side, and the girls live at home with their mother, Marmee. There's a boy living next door named Laurie, and they all become close friends. So the book is about them growing up and overcoming challenges and learning lessons. The March sisters are also talented and creative and wonderful. Marmee is an inspiration. She's the pinnacle of womanhood and motherhood, while still acknowledging and struggling with her own imperfections. Laurie is funny and bright and amazing. The characters are so detailed and nuanced that they feel like real people, and that's why their journeys and adventures are so compelling. I'm also a big fan of the movie adaptations, the Winona one and the Saoirse one. And I'd seen both of those movies fairly recently, but I hadn't reread the book in a while. So there were a few events in the movies that I'd forgotten happened differently in the book. The biggest one being that Jo meets Professor Bear before Laurie proposes to her. In the movies, Laurie proposes to Jo, and she rejects him and runs away to New York City. And then she meets Bear. But that's not what happens in the book. In the book, Jo had already been to New York and she'd already befriended Bear, and then she came home to celebrate Laurie's graduation from college, and then Laurie proposed to her. And that just makes so much more sense. Jo said no to Laurie because her heart already belonged to Bear, even though she and Bear didn't realize it yet. And I think that makes Jo and Bear's relationship so much more meaningful. Jo wasn't using Bear as an escape or as a tool to forget Laurie. Jo met Bear before Laurie told Jo how he felt about her. So Jo and Bear's relationship is totally its own thing, and it's not in the shadow of Jo and Laurie's relationship, which is very important. Laurie's proposal in the Saoirse Ronan movie adaptation is almost word for word from the book, and the setting and the blocking of the proposal scene in the Winona Ryder movie is very similar to the book. But Laurie does not kiss Jo in the book, and I really wish they hadn't added that to the Winona Ryder one. But despite that, that one is still a very great movie. The most significant thing that I discovered during this reread is that I like Amy. All the other times I've read the book, she has annoyed me, and that's because I identify with Jo so much. Jo is my favorite character, and since Jo and Amy argue so much in the book, I always just automatically side with Jo and dislike Amy. And although I still haven't forgiven Amy for burning Jo's manuscript, I do appreciate Amy so much more as a character now than I did before. I like how opinionated and strong and talented she is. She's actually very similar to Jo, which is why they butt heads so often. I've always viewed Amy as the aggravating little sister, but she's also loving and loyal and confident and very admirable. It kind of feels like a betrayal to admit that I like Amy and identify with her after years of strongly disliking her, but she really is a truly wonderful character. Also, with this recent reread, I finally understand why Laurie and Amy end up together. I always thought it was the weirdest thing in the world that they get married. It didn't make sense to me, and it frustrated me so much. It felt like Laurie was just settling for the only other available March sister, since he couldn't have Jo. But that's not what was going on at all. Laurie and Amy are perfect for each other. They're both artistic and sophisticated, and they like living a fancy, formal life. Jo is more rustic and wouldn't have fit into Laurie's rich world. But Amy was made for it. She's a graceful princess, but there's also so much more to Amy than that. She is strong-willed, stubborn, disciplined, ambitious, and driven. I love her line about how when it comes to her art, she wants to be great or nothing. She likes having a plan and being in control, and Laurie likes going with the flow and being controlled by Amy specifically. If Jo tried to control Laurie, he would flare up and lose his temper. But he likes being handled by Amy in a way that he doesn't like being handled by anybody else. because she's special. Laurie and Amy's dynamic works really well. Amy is in charge and Laurie loves following her. And Amy's discipline and ambition is a perfect way to combat Laurie's laziness. She tunes him up when they see each other in Europe. She tells him she despises what he has become and how he's wasted his money and talents and blessings. And that is exactly what he needs to hear to turn his life around. Also, Laurie knows how to challenge and excite Amy, which is what she needs. And another thing is that when Laurie and Joe fight, it's straight up disagreement and flat out arguing. It's uncomfortable and it's unhealthy. But when Laurie and Amy fight, it's true banter. It's playful and exciting. Laurie and Amy are a great couple because they know how to complement each other and make each other feel good. They are a positive influence in each other's lives instead of just bringing angst and drama. I think if I could get everyone in the world to read one chapter of Little Women, it would be chapter 34, Friend. In that chapter, we learn more about Professor Bear and how generous, compassionate, knowledgeable, and humble he is. He's just the best. And not only is there a great friendship and romance brewing between Joe and Professor Bear in this chapter, but there are also great perspectives and musings about philosophy, religion, education, and the social and political climate of 1860s America. We, as readers, learn more about Louisa May Alcott's feelings about these topics. This book is filled with so many wonderful life lessons about how to be a good sibling, a good child, a good parent, and a good friend. Beth is a saint, and from her, the reader learns how to be gentle, selfless, kind, and service-oriented. Meg grows from a vain young girl into a mature woman, and from her we learn that true and lasting beauty comes from within. I think it's so interesting that the reader learns so much from both a static character like Beth and a dynamic character like Meg. And that is just a credit to Louisa May Alcott's writing. She is truly a master of her craft and a master at creating compelling characters. I love Laurie's grandfather, Mr. Lawrence, and I love the March sisters' father, Mr. March. They're both wonderful men, so generous and kind and loving. Hannah, their housekeeper, is also wonderful. She provides a lot of comedy relief. John Brooke, Laurie's tutor who marries Meg, is very grounded and is a wonderful father to his children that he has with Meg. And those children, the twins, Daisy and Demi, also provide a lot of comedy relief. They have a very specific speech pattern that I think is really funny. Not only is the whole cast of characters very well fleshed out and just amazing, but Alcott also has amazing moments that are so memorable and truly iconic, like when Amy falls through the ice and Joe and Laurie have to save her, or when Joe cuts off her hair and sells it to get money to help her father. One of my favorite moments is when Meg stands up to Aunt March and tells her that she loves John Brooke even though he's poor, and that she doesn't need money to be happy. I love that she knows her own mind and that she isn't intimidated by Aunt March, and that she is determined to marry this man who she loves. I love how Beth makes slippers for Mr. Lawrence. I love their special friendship. I love how Amy is the bigger person at the art fair and shares her table and her wares with the other girls at the art fair instead of being petty or vengeful after they've been so rude and horrible to her. She's a very classy lady. I love the poem that Joe writes at the end of the book about the 4 chests up in the attic that belong to each of the March sisters, and she talks about the objects that are contained in them and what those objects represent, and she talks about all of their memories and experiences as children and how childhood is over now, and it's very bittersweet. Louisa May Alcott is so witty and clever and well-read. She makes so many great references to mythology and classic literature. She is the queen of balance. She knows how to make your heart melt with romance without going overboard with the sentimentality. And she knows how to rip your heart out with sadness without dwelling on tragedy in a melancholy way. She's a master at balancing the ancient staying power of Shakespeare and the Bible with the progress and modernity of her contemporary philosophers, as well as her own thoughts on principles and morals and women's rights that are so applicable today in 2022 and will continue to be relevant as the years go on. I just admire Alcott so much, and I treasure this book so much. So that'll do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching.